Welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, where we look beyond surface behaviour to better understand how horses think, learn and respond. I'm Jenny Langley, joined by Australian horseman Mark Langley, as we answer questions from our online members and discuss alternative practical approaches to training that prioritises emotional balance, clarity and trust. This week, preparing horses for shows and your clinics, Mark, and riding past mobs of goats. These are tips for getting your horse ready under saddle. Mark, the first question comes from Helen from Australia. She loves listening to your answers and watching the videos in the video library, by the way. She took one of her mares to one of your clinics last year, and she's booked again for 2 clinics this year. Her question relates to taking horses to shows and how best to prepare them for it. She knows that you've said how much anxiety a show can cause, especially in young horses that have been taken to many shows early in their life. So she would like to know, what kind of preparation would you recommend for a horse, and is there an age which you would not expose them to that environment before?
Yeah, shows are really, really tough because there's lead classes for yearlings and 2-year-olds and all sorts of things. And I think because we take a horse to a show, say to be halter shown, especially if it's just for confirmation and things like that, there are certain things that they have to understand. But sometimes we think, it'll be okay, they'll be right. We'll take them to the show and see how they go, because we're not actually riding them. If you take a horse to a show that you need to ride and be safe on, you deliberately put more work into it because your life's on the line. But when it's just a little kind of, a yearling horse or something, or a big yearling horse, you think, it leads well enough, I can take it to the show, but I don't have to ride it, so it doesn't matter. But it's the experience. It doesn't matter if you're on the horse's back, it's the experience that they have to go through that is what we're looking at. And when they're prepared is really tough, because some horses nearly need to be fully started to even cope with a show, because all the things that we're showing them and dealing with pressure, dealing with things around them, people above them, all being tied up properly, hosed, whatever. All those things are things that help a horse cope in a show. So if you were taking, I'm going to make it simple, if you were taking a young horse to a show, like the start of its show career, and you just wanted to take it as a yearling, to be shown as a yearling, okay? So that's probably something that I'd say is pretty tough, because the show's just as big, just the horse has got less education, okay? The first thing you're looking at with horses, which I think we've really got to pay attention to, is, and this is it sounds very simple, but it's very, very important. Is my horse a problem solver or a comfort seeker? Is it a problem solver or a comfort seeker? So very quickly you can sort of look at a horse and go, this horse is a bit anxious. It goes, mum, where's mum? Where's my friends? Where's my friends? Don't think about the problem. So the comfort seekers can sometimes be ones that just shut down. So if I'm adding a stimulant to a young horse and I see it just start to go, I'm a little bit scared, and just zone out, then I know if I take it to a show, it's going to get overwhelmed, because it doesn't search and process when it's overwhelmed or scared, okay? If it's beautiful to lead around the place, and then all of a sudden I wave a flag while I'm leading and all the horse does is look for its mates, I know when I take it to the show, it's going to be screaming at the other horse that you brought to the show or whatever, because it's going to overwhelm it. So we have to set our horses up that when we create a negative stimulant, it doesn't matter what that negative stimulant is, because at the show, there's going to be 50,000 negative stimulants that are going to make that horse go, I don't know what that is, what do I do? So we somehow create a negative stimulant in their environment and a pathway to follow that they know they can feel good through. And that comes back to our leading and our connection with our horses, okay? So all the time when I'm training young horses, I create a negative stimulant. Could be just me waving a tarp, could be a flag, could be rattling a rail, kicking a bucket. whatever it is, or, someone else does something over there. Many clinics, I've got someone else to wave a flag and the horse, goes, I don't know what to do with that. And I say, yeah, but if you follow this lead rope, you'll be safe. So for those horses that are going to be exposed to those unknown stimulants out there, they have to lead really well and know that when anything's going on out there that they're confused about, they can just follow that lead rope, soften, and that thing's not going to hurt them. Nothing's going to chase them. Nothing's going to, whatever. And then they follow that lead rope and they can trust being with us and following us as leaders. The other thing, we have to lead our horses like a leader. I see it shows too many times people jagging their horses, getting them, always hammering their horses and managing them all the time. When you teach them how to lead, make sure that that lead rope works really well and you can lead them and guide them. And if they're at a show, you act like a leader, not turn around and manage them and get in their face all the time. So you have to have that arrangement where they're connected with you as a good leader and they trust that lead rope. And every time there's a negative stimulant, they can trust following that feel and be okay with that. And I think that's the biggest thing I say, prepare a horse for show, is create an anxiety and then a pathway of safety through whatever we're teaching them. And that's mostly leading because it's all your in-hand stuff and the things that you have to do at the show. So that other stuff gets them used to the turmoil of the show and the things that they can't control. The other thing is, what do you need to do at the show? Do you need to trot your horse up in hand? What do you need to do? So technically you shouldn't even take your horse to the show if it can't lead amazingly and can't travel on the float amazingly, because those journeys on the float and everything is going to cause trouble. But when you're at the show and you have to lead that horse up, if that horse is struggling and you got to whack it with a stick to get it to jog up just for the judge, then basically you're training your horse at the show. So don't train your horse at the show to do what it has to do in hand. Make sure it really understands that. And then if the horse understands what it's asking, it has a pathway when it's worried, then you should be a lot better. This is where I see too many horses fall apart at shows. And I had an instance in the States a while ago where the first time I ever got really upset with someone, I helped them out after it, but I probably did lose my calmness when I saw two horses trying to climb out of a stable because they were so fried, two big young Friesians. And I just really got upset and said, we shouldn't be doing this to horses. We shouldn't be taking them to this environment. I mean, this was a high-octane environment with this without enough education. And the typical thing is, but they're not like this at home. I said, well, this is not home, is it? This is like taking someone out of their, their lounge room into Palestine when it's getting bombed and saying, here's your water pistol, you'll be right. It's not the same. So basically they need a lot of how to think under pressure situations to be able to survive, like I said at the start. So yeah, really important. Otherwise we can cook our horse as a yearling, but by the time we're going to start it at 3-year-old, it's already fried.
Because there's a lot of people will say taking a horse to a show is just a good exposure for it, won't they?
Yeah, exposure is about how you feel during that exposure and throughout that. Yeah, exposure is exposing a horse. So post-traumatic stress syndrome, we all have heard people in the military suffer from that. People in ambulance, anyone that's had traumatic experiences, suddenly, then all of a sudden, like there's a Jimmy Barnes song that he's the helicopter and he feels like he's back in Vietnam, all that sort of stuff. That's all linked to post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I see that. You see it in greyhounds. We got a greyhound that's had the sleep startles and all that sort of stuff, and horses suffer from the same thing, and I've seen horses that really suffer from it, that all it takes is 5 horses mingling around and then you can't get into their head. They're just completely off and it all starts from being taken to a very challenging environment and staying anxious without finding an answer of safety and comfort. So then all of a sudden they go into full flight mode every time they go near that environment, and then eventually it's not even a show, it's just a whatever causes it. The other thing, like before the shows, do everything I said about the exposure and the leading, anxiety exposure and the leading, and finding safety through feel and connection. But then do smaller exposures. Float the horse somewhere. Like the other day, floated some horses near a busy road, got them to soften, put them back on the float, brought them home. Like just little things. So they're little outings, just like someone would learn to be a soldier. They're not going to. They build them for a certain while before they throw them in the mosh pit.
And do you think humans have to recognise that these environments aren't, horses can't just adapt to them, that they actually need help? Do you think people actually know that? Do you think they recognise that these environments are difficult for horses, or do they just assume that no, they can just learn to cope?
So it depends. It depends the school of thought and what you come from. There's still a big school of thought that more exposure, more wet saddle blankets, they'll be right. They just need more. And there's a lot of people who still think that. I wouldn't be dealing with shut down horses and post-traumatic stress syndrome horses if that was the case. But there's a lot of people who realise how tough our environment is for horses and really try to do the right thing to build their level of understanding and their capabilities and their confidence to do well in those situations. And I think we should think about it as this is completely not a horse environment, and how can we help them adapt and understand so they can cope with it.
Going from a non-horse environment to very much a horse environment, Louise from California would like to have some tips on the best way that she can prepare herself and her horse for your upcoming clinic when you go to the States. She has a 7-year-old Andalusian gelding who's smart, brave and strong-willed. He's going okay in his hand and under saddle, but he can be a little bit sticky to lead and bridle lame when he's behind her own leg. Her goals include improving her reinsmanship and setting up positive experiences for trail riding with groups of horses. When she can't get something done the Mark Langley way, she has other background and techniques that she goes back to with some limited success. She'd like a little bit more input from you, though, because she thinks she could be going a lot better with them. Do you have any tips to help her make the most of her time with you? She's very excited.
I have tips for the person, not so much for the horse in this one, because my clinics are very much based on me doing a diagnosis first. And if I was a doctor and someone said, yeah, just take, just do this, and then you go to the specialist or doctor and the doctor says, whoa, why did you do that for? You've got another underlying issue. So I can't give you a pre-clinic things to do with your horse, except the stuff that you see online that you've watched on my videos and stuff. All I need you to do really is look at how I would identify your horse when you get to a clinic, and maybe just look a bit deeper into the little issues that your horse has, and really work on the video library of what is my horse's quirk and red flag. And just because a clinic is an experience where it's very individual for every horse and every person, so you don't have to have your horse used to certain things as such before you do the clinic, because I might say, no, don't do that. I do this over here with this horse for a while, and then I do that. So in this context, I can't give you too much advice. But I will say that your horse has to be away from home for 2 days, and it has to travel. So work on, if your horse has got any discomfort travelling or anything like that, work on the experience of travelling and the experience of staying away from home for 2 nights or 3 nights or however long it takes, and I know you've only got 2 days on the clinic, but if it takes so many days to travel, whatever it is, you just work on how that horse is going to cope with that experience, okay? So it could be doing a bit more loading, short travels in the float, stuff like that. Maybe boxing the horse up, so because the clinic venues are sometimes a bit different. Some horses got paddocks, some horses got, boxes that they go in. So maybe boxing, if it's a horse that's just in a big paddock all the time, maybe if you've got a stall, you can bring a couple of horses in and have them stalled a little bit so it's used to the stall a bit. Just other things that will help that horse with the whole clinic experience. But in the sense of the lessons you get, it's very personal, and I'll make a diagnosis on what I think the exact needs of your horse will be. In the sense of you, be open-minded. be open-minded. To learn, you have to be open-minded. I believe there's education and there's belief in people, and sometimes we get stuck in a belief system where we can be educated out of it. So what happens in training, I say to people in my pre-clinic talk, is learning is uncomfortable. So you can wriggle in your chair and then shut down and walk out going, I don't want to hear this, because your belief may take over. But sometimes I say just sit and ride it out. And at the end of the day, when you've seen a few horses and you've chewed over it, were you learning something, or did you just believe differently? So I'm comfortable when I'm watching someone doing something that I've sort of kind of thought of, but they've actually paved the road for me of an idea I had, and they've gone further. So I feel excited about learning that stuff. I feel uncomfortable with somebody if they were flogging their horse and it didn't make sense to the horse at all. So I would feel uncomfortable with that person. So if you saw me at a clinic flogging your horse, you'd be uncomfortable, but you wouldn't be uncomfortable in yourself. You'd be uncomfortable with what I was doing with your horse. But if you saw me showing your horse another pathway and you were going, hang on, I've done the opposite, and I believed in that opposite, but this is actually, gee, that's right, and I was maybe I'm wrong. Well, it's not that you're wrong, it's just you're doing something different. But your ego will say, no, everyone else is doing this, and you're doing it differently. But I believe in my gut somewhere there's a piece of this that's right. That would be, you're uncomfortable and then you have to sit and ride that out. So I think to prepare a person for a clinic, I say be prepared for learning and sometimes being uncomfortable, and also me showing you alternatives. And that might mean the opposite of what you've done in the past. And it's not to sort of judge or say what you were doing was wrong. It's just to say, well, I probably did that too, and this is what I've done now, and I found this better. So, yeah. And as I said at the start, be quite open-minded. We're there to discuss things, chew over the fat a little bit, and it's going to be really fun. So yeah, you'll enjoy it.
There's certainly no requirement for horses to be at a certain stage at a clinic. Can I just say that? I often get asked this. People email me and say, what should I be doing with my horse? And I generally say you don't need to do anything at all. And then sometimes the less you do, the better. Because when you bring a horse to mark, he's just going to give you a whole load of new stuff to work on, and his angle and what he's seeing. And sometimes that's really interesting, especially if they haven't had a lot of work, because when you bring a horse back in, it's going to happen to everybody. There's always a period of time where you don't have much time with your horse, and it's really interesting to see how to tackle that from Mark's perspective. But yeah, going with an open mind, because you just don't know what he's going to do, what he's going to see, and then the layers that he peels back. That's what he does at a clinic. He's not just looking at how to get you to do one particular thing. He's looking at how we can make things so much better so that everything fits together for you, providing you with lots of different ways to do that. So I think you can just have, like you said, have that open mind. And it's a really small group, so it's really supportive, and they're good, fun, relaxed atmospheres. So no need to feel under any pressure with what you turn up with. Everyone's very accepting. So moving on to the next question from Karen. Mark, this is an interesting question because Karen lives on a cattle station with her horse out in Australia, and her horse is young and green and can get a bit nervous out in the paddocks. But she can ride past a mob of 200 wild goats, no problem. The problem is when they come across perhaps only a small handful, like 5 or so, her horse will prop and stop, and he has trouble getting past them. Karen has tried to sit quietly at a distance and just let him look, but that hasn't done anything. And she thinks that maybe the smell of the billies in the big mob, and then the absence of those billies in the smaller mobs, so there isn't a smell, could perhaps be making him look at the goats in a different way. But she'd like to know, how can she show him that actually just a couple of goats is good?
Just for all our listeners all around the world, there's one of our biggest, well, there's a lot of feral animals in Australia, but one of the biggest, feral animals that are going through a lot of countries in Australia, the goats. The goats are breeding up because we've got a lot of shrubs and desert shrubs and stuff, and yeah, lots of goats, and some people can make a lot of money out of catching feral goats. But there's something that I'll say to everybody: there's only certain goat cheeses that I can eat, and if you've ever been with a mob of billy goats and you smelt that smell, you'll know why there's only certain goat cheeses I can eat and others that I can't go near. But anyway, once you've been out in the bush and you've been in that situation, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, goats. So I wouldn't be concerned about the amount of goats so much. There's a reason why your horse is doing it. You could be right about the smell, and maybe the big mob is such a big mob that it just goes, oh, that's a big mob, or what are these little mob over here that's scaring me, whatever that may be. It does not really, because those 4 goats could just represent 4 pigs or some dogs or whatever. So the thing about anything like this situation is the fixation and the adjustability of the thought, okay? So when you're riding your horse, you're constantly monitoring how well you can adjust it. So a basic example is my horse is thinking left because kind of home's left, and it's always thinking left, and I feel like it's drifting all the time. But I can kind of ride it straight or to the right. But if I just loosen the reins, my horse is still kind of veering to the left like a car with a bad wheel alignment. So basically, that particular horse, if you kept it sort of roughly going the direction you want it, but feeling that it's still thinking left, you could ride it for an hour, and that horse has been thinking to the left, which is the homeward direction, but you've been riding it kind of to the straight and to the right for an hour. So that horse has held on to that thought for an hour that if you let go of that straight line and you stop micromanaging that straight line or that slight right-hand direction, I'm going to just wander off to the left. So inevitably what's happened is that horse has hung on to that thought of going home for a whole hour, and the reins and the legs and everything that you've done haven't done anything about it, okay? So that would cause a horse to not be adjustable when you pick up a feel on it, because you've had kind of a feel on it riding that way for an hour and nothing's happened. So if you can understand that concept, that's how I ride horses all the time. It doesn't matter if it's left or right, my mates, hay, horizon, goats. It's, can you let go of that, not fixate? So some horses fixate on safety. Where's my friends? As soon as they see a goat, where's my friends? They don't even think about the goat. Others might look at the goat and go, gee, I'm overwhelmed by that goat. I'm staring at the goat, I'm staring at the goat, I'm staring at the goat, and the goat just takes over its whole world for some time, and you can't get it to let go of the goat. So either way, the horse that looks at the goat and thinks away, you have to say, hey, don't fixate on safety, let go of that, and then maybe think about the goat. The horse that focuses on the goat, that goes into a frozen state or can't be shifted very easily, you've got to say, hey, let go of the goat and think about something else. So the horse that fixates on the goat, which is yours, you're saying, hey, here's an alternative, let's go over here instead. So the horse goes, oh, I can actually move to safety a little bit when there's something that I don't understand or I'm frightened of. So then when you move a little bit away, you turn back and they go, oh, I've moved away into a safer spot and the goat's still there, it hasn't killed me. Maybe it's not so dangerous. So the moral of the story is get the mindset and the direction of thought adjustable so you can adjust it with the tiniest bit of feel. Just a pick up of a rein and the horse goes, let go of that. So instead of trying to push through the goats or past the goats or anything, just say, hey, why don't you let go of the goats and come over here? And then when you go over here a little bit, you turn back and then say, yeah, now let's have another look. And then when they fixate a little bit or freeze a little bit, you say, hey, let go of them again. Let's go over here, and then we'll have another look. So you can get them to look at the goats and look away from the goats, move towards the goats, move away from the goats. And then soon enough, they let go of the fixation and the worry dissipates, and then you start to be able to move around the goats or whatever that thing may be that scares them and be a lot safer. And then everything after that, because you're working in that mindset of, hey, don't hang on to things and don't fixate, your horse becomes a lot softer, a lot more adjustable, and any little problem along the way, you can help them, adjust their mind to help them through, and then then what happens is they start to live in the green zone, which is that more adjustable, soft thinking, curious but cautious mindset.
Can you explain why the big mob of goats is okay for this particular horse?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm interested about that one.
Yeah, no. Some things it could be just because there's such a big number of, maybe because there's a small number, there's some sort of danger or unpredictability in that mob. Maybe it is the smell, like there could be a smell, but the association of a big mob all moving together is different than small unpredictable mobs that sort of bounce around a bit and spread a bit, whereas the bigger mobs work differently as well. So there might be something in that. There could be a sense of a few goats on their own give it some sort of more predatorial feeling than a mob together. But I'm not going to say exactly why. It's just a different thing. The horse is a bit nervous. It's like why some horses are nervous of something there, but they're not scared of that. You go, well, it's very similar, but slightly different for that horse.
Because I remember being on some horses and I'd see a big mob of sheep, and that was totally overwhelming compared to just one or two sheep together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that big mob of sheep or goats that are just like moving ground at a distance. It can be quite scary for horses that haven't seen it before, but once they're familiar with it, yeah.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for those answers. Thank you for the questions that have come through. We will be back next week answering more of these questions. See you then.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
If you'd like to help apply any of these ideas to your own horse, you can join Mark Langley online. The membership gives you access to Mark's full training library, detailed step-by-step exercises and regular Q&A support to help you better understand your horse's behaviour, training and emotional responses. It's designed to give people more practical, thoughtful solutions that help horses learn with confidence, softness and understanding. To find out more, head to marklangley.com.au and click join.